Our good friend Jimbo Swenson is asking us, should Tua Tagovailoa be benched this week? That and so much more on tonight's episode of the Football Guys Mailbag Show. Troy, you know you got to start us off with this question. Miami Dolphins fan, Tua Tagovailoa coming off a 469-yard, 6-touchdown performance, but faces off against the red-hot Buffalo Bills this weekend. Are we benching Tua or are we firing him up?
Look, before we get to this week's game, this is the Tua show, everybody. I was hyped backstage. As y'all know, I'm a diehard Dolphins fan. People have been roasting me for believing in Tua forever. 6-touchdown game. I could not believe it, everybody. That was beautiful. I thought we lost. I was done with the game after the Rashad Bateman touchdown, after the Lamar Jackson run. I'm like, oh my God, it's over. We're trash. Oh, the hype. And then all of a sudden they made a comeback. And then that's one of the things we needed to test, right? So week 1 against the Patriots, we saw the Dolphins with a lead. Now we saw Dolphins come back with adversity. So we needed to see that. In terms of this week, absolutely not benching them because it could be a shootout. Now it's like with this offense, it could be a shootout. Before the season, the fact that we're even in like a conversation that is going to be a competitive game, because the last time the Dolphins played the Bills, like the last 2 times, they've been blown out by like 50. So now it's actually going to be a real game. People are actually excited. The Bills could actually lose. If I was a betting man, I'm not going to bet that they're going to lose, but I believe that Tua is going to keep pace. At least, you know what? Even if the Bills start off hot, at least we know the Dolphins offense is capable of keeping pace, capable of, scoring points. And then last week showed that Tua is capable of supporting 2 wide receiver ones. Is capable of being a quarterback of an explosive
top
offense.
3 wide receivers. Top 3 wide receivers on the week.
Exactly. And then the fact that like no one going to the season believed that, everyone's like, okay, he support maybe 1, but 2. I didn't even think 2 get it. But no, I'm just playing. But no, I'm absolutely not benching Tua. I think it's either going to be a QB1 for the rest of the season, anything like that. It's too early to tell. I think he's going to be a low-end QB1, very high-end QB2 with these weapons that he has. But yeah, you're not benching him, especially in Superflex. Whether Superflex, 1 QB, you're playing Tua.
So that's your cop out. You slipped that in at the very end. You're not benching him in Superflex. We're talking about single QB here.
I'm being
season. I don't
thorough.
want to talk about your Superflex. You're in a
redraft
Superflex.
Superflex redraft leagues too, Dave. I'm being inclusive.
Well, let's talk a 10 team league, 10-team redraft league.
I'll play him.
Starting Tua Tagovailoa. Is he in the top 10 this week?
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, he could easily be in the top 10 with this offense. If he has to keep pace with Josh Allen, why not? I mean, yeah, the defense is going to be tough, but the offense is also tough. They got to figure out a way to deal with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. And somehow, if you're able to cover them, look, you got Mike Gesicki, who actually showed up last week, or you can just dump it off to either Raheem Mostert or Chase Edmonds, we'll be talking a lot about later. But yeah, so you have options. You have options. So to me, yeah, it's Tua. It could be definitely top 10 this week.
Oh man, if this show is fun leading up to Bills and Dolphins, I can't even imagine what next week is going to be like when we got to deal with the aftermath of it. Victoria, for anybody who is not watching this show or is brand new to the Mailbag Show for whatever reason, Troy down here is a Dolphins fan and Victoria is a Bills fan. So we get 2 really fun shows every single year where we get to talk about this. Now, Victoria, obviously Tua, red hot last week, looked really good. We already talked about him supporting 2 of the top 3 wide receivers. Obviously, the other wide receiver that finished in the top 3 was Stephon Diggs, who had a phenomenal game last week. Let's just talk about this Bills defense for a second, because this is, I think, why the question is being raised. Obviously, Tua's balling out right now, but this Bills defense has allowed 17 points in 2 games. And it's not like they're playing against scrubs either. They kept the Rams to 10 points. They kept Derrick Henry on a leash last week. I mean, it has been a struggle for any team that has faced off against the Bills. So let's hear your very unbiased and objective opinion here. Now, are you confident starting Tua this week? Top 10, top 12? Are you taking the super flex? Is that the only way you're starting him? Let's hear a little bit about Tua.
I think top 10 is a little rich for me. Maybe top 12. I could put him in there. My only worry. So here's the other side of this, Troy. I have 2 counterparts to this. 2 quarterbacks that played the Bills the last 2 weeks. Stafford week 1, QB 29 finish, 10.8 points, 63 QBR. 240 yards, 3 interceptions, 7 sacks, only 1 touchdown. And when we saw Ryan Tannehill last week, QB 32, 2.9 points. I don't even need to say the rest. It was abysmal. 2 interceptions, 2 sacks. I mean, the defense, Dave, like you said, was on fire. I'd say Tua is playing at a level a bit higher than these two, arguably in between these guys, if you want to say that. Game is at home, though, for Miami. If like we just said, if you're in a 10,
it's gonna be hot. Sorry to interrupt. I'm gonna say also you have to travel. The Buffalo Bills have to travel to Miami. It's gonna be hot. They're gonna be home. And here's the thing: Dolphins fans usually don't show up, but the way that the things have been sold out, like Dolphins fans are gonna be crazy. It's gonna be kind of like the Bills Mafia, but it's gonna be in Miami. Look, it's gonna be wild. Okay, continue.
Let me stop you there. Nothing.
Well, we got Finn's Mafia. Is that a thing?
It's gonna be 2-9, baby. 2-9.
Listen,
2-9.
No, let's be clear here. Nothing is like Bills Mafia, and half of Buffalo has migrated to Florida because that's just what happened. So they're going to be representing as they always do. First of all, I mean, there's other guys that like you can be streaming in a 10 to 12 team league that maybe have a better matchup. Carson Wentz coming out of nowhere with these games these last couple of weeks. I think if I had him as my only QB, I'm putting him in. Here's my caveat: I'm keeping an eye on these injury reports. Bill's defense is currently hurting. Came out of that Titans game really banged up. Today, did not practice guys like Micah Hyde, Dane Jackson, cornerback, Jordan Phillips, who's been wreaking havoc all over that defensive line. And limited was Jordan Poyer, Ed Oliver, defensive tackle, and Tim Settle.
Your whole defense.
Really, we're hurting. And I'm hoping we get, obviously we got to hope we get some of those guys back. But realistically, I don't know if you guys saw the Dane Jackson injury. That was horrifying. He's okay. But realistically, we're looking at the Bills playing with 2 rookie cornerbacks in Kyer Elam and Christian Benford, 6th-round pick. So there's my counter argument where Tua could still hit through the air with Waddle and Tyreek, of course, because if there's the 2 rookie cornerbacks, then we'll see.
They're going to be toast. If they're 2 rookie quarterbacks against Tyreek and Jan Wild, y'all in trouble.
It's going to be interesting.
The Dolphins get a very banged up Baltimore Ravens secondary, and they picked them apart last week, and now they get a very banged up Buffalo Bills secondary going into this week, and we'll see how it goes. Right. Really, for me, and yeah, I think I'm the one person that doesn't have any skin in this game. So I'll, I think I think we're all sort of in agreement though that Tua is a back end QB1. Unfortunately, that back end QB1 is just there's a lot of them this year. I mean, looking through my rankings right now, I've kind of got all these guys tiered similarly: Carson Wentz, Tua Tagovailoa, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota. I mean, that's 13 through 18 for me. So all of those guys are technically outside of my top 12 quarterbacks. And I've got them tiered. I mean, you could stream them, you can take a flyer on them. And I think if you're doing that, you're looking for the best matchup. I think that, just knowing the weapons that Tua Tagovailoa has around him, you kind of got to look at him as a top 10, top 12 quarterback going forward for the rest of the season. But depending on who can play this week, I think he could have a tough matchup if some of these guys are able to clear throughout the week. So I can't give a strong answer here. I think really what it comes down to is who is going to be able to play. If Micah Hyde's out there, if Jordan Poyer's out there, that's a little scary if they could take the top off and really limit the big plays from Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. So for me, the question is whether should Tua be benched or should he be started? I think it just comes down to the injury report that we're going to get on Saturday or Sunday to make that final decision. But I'm eating crow on Tua. I'd been hating on him for the last couple of years, but he's looked good these first 2 weeks, and I gotta give it to him.
Anyway, we gotta talk about David been roasting this man because he can't throw, he can't do this, he can't do that. So just so you know, Dave and I have had some heated battles about Tua. So now, look, he could absolutely suck this week. I'm not gonna lie, but I'm excited about the prospects of the rest of the season. Okay, we can go to the next question.
Wait, when he does,
you'll be hearing from me, Troy. Just know.
You'll be hearing from me when I say this man is still your father of the Dolphins. All right, Josh Allen, honey baby. Okay.
You've been waiting to show that probably the entire show.
No, I've had this forever. That's what I do during the show. I get the stress out. My stress ball, Josh Allen. I'm just kidding. No stressing on this show. But you're gonna be hearing from me next week when we Yeah. Sorry, Joe. I don't want to say any bad words here.
So far, here we are 10 minutes into the show, and pretty much we have just hyped up next week. Got to tune in. It's going to be a must-watch show after this game. But want to thank everybody for tuning into another episode of the Mailbag Show. Here we are now out of week 2, heading into week 3, and we're going to help you out with all of your fantasy football questions. If you're in the chat right now, drop your questions, and we will get to those at the end of the show. But we're going to start off with some pre-submitted questions. You can submit those questions at mailbag@footballguys.com. You can also send them to us on Discord. You can send them to us on Twitter. There's a lot of ways that you can get questions to us. We'll pick the best ones, and we will put them up on this show. Before we dive into the rest of the questions, though, Troy, real quickly, why don't you let everyone know where they can find you on social media and what you are up to these days?
Sure. You can find me at TKingMode on Twitter. That's my home base. You can pretty much find me at any social media platform at TKingMode. I'm all over the place this year, but you can find me here every single Wednesday hanging out with these two goofballs. And also you can find me. I have a new show on another platform, Destination Debbie, with my friend Laquan Jones, who's also a Football Guys member. We got a new show that comes out 7:30 on Tuesday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Tuesdays. But yeah, make sure you tune that out and check that out. And yeah, you know how to find me, interact with me, chill with me. We can do our thing.
Absolutely. And then top right of the screen, you see Victoria. Victoria, let everyone know where they can find you as well.
Sure, you can find me at FFB_Victoria on Twitter and Instagram. I am just Troy's energy level today. It's just gonna carry us through this whole show. I'm loving it. I'm happy for you, Troy. Listen, I'm happy for you. But
I'm happy after this weekend.
I'm happy Troy's happy.
I'm gonna let you finish, but Josh Allen is gonna stomp the yard on y'all on Sunday. So just saying.
Yeah, I'm happy for you, Troy. I mean, I know it's been a rough season, catching a lot of flack from different fan bases and whatnot.
My entire life, as a Dolphins fan, it's been rough.
But you got your wing. I can empathize, man. I get it. Back in 2018, when Mitch Trubisky had that 6-touchdown game, we had a brand new coach. We had spent all this money on Allen Robinson. I felt it, man. I had that same energy you got today. So I completely understand, and I'm happy that you are happy.
Bro, we're not talking about Mr. Trubisky on Tua Day. Let's continue.
But anyway, let's go ahead and dive into the rest of the pre-submitted questions. Be sure to give us a thumbs up if you're watching this. It helps send some other viewers our way. So if you're watching right now on YouTube, drop us a thumbs up, get some other people in the chat. But anyway, let's go ahead and dive right in with a question from Jordan. And our friend Santos L. Helper 83 on Twitter is saying, who do you all see as the most fantasy viable back for the remainder of the season? Ezekiel, Elliott, or Tony Pollard? This is year 3 of this conversation now, where we are having the Ezekiel Elliott or Tony Pollard discussion. Victoria, go ahead and start us off here. Zeke or Tony?
Oh, I don't like this question. We talked about our man Zeke over the offseason and how he's been getting it done in whatever way he needs to these last 4 or 5 years he's been in the league. But first 2 weeks of this season, 5.9 PPR points, both weeks in a row. Sheesh. Last week, 15 carries, 53 yards, 2 receptions. It's nothing good. Now, we know Cooper Rush is the quarterback for a little while longer. In probably a lot of our minds, we were thinking, okay, well, the quarterback's average. You usually lean on your run game. They don't have as many receivers healthy. They got CeeDee Lamb and really a bunch of other various guys on the outside. You expect them to lean on the run game. You expect it to be with Zeke, the man who they paid a lot of money to. And then you see Tony Pollard coming in week 2, gets 9 carries for 43 yards, gets the touchdown, and here's the kicker, 7 targets. He caught a lot of those balls for 55 yards. 55, yeah. So this is tough. I think it's if I had Zeke right now, I'm very off of him. I think that I want to wait to see if he can have some kind of bounce back week, maybe like 12 to 17 point game, something like that, where I'd pounce on the opportunity to package him after he has some kind of bounce back game. I expect him to have something. He's not going to get 6 points every game this year. Don't quote me on that, because if that happens, that's embarrassing. But I mean, right now you got to look at the usage, and right now it seems to be going majority to Pollard through the air. So for PPR, that's important. Now, if you're in half PPR standard, sorry about that. Maybe you should talk to your commissioner there. But I think I'm just off Zeke, and you have to follow that usage. I did want to look up the snap counts. That's one thing I didn't look up before the show. But
so I do see that
Footballguys.com has a very great, easy to read tool. So go right ahead, Troy. Let's hear what you got to say, though. Zeke and Pollard, who do you prefer?
So this is easy for me, but not in a good way, because I'm actually going to say Tony Pollard here. And for people who know me, I guess if you could call me a Tony Pollard hater. I just feel that in terms of just running back, Tony Pollard has more juice, but I'm a Tony Pollard hater because of his, usually in the past years, he just hasn't had the opportunities we're looking for. He doesn't have the workload that we're looking for to see consistent fantasy production. But let's look at the past 2 weeks. Week 1, he saw 51%, about 52% snap share, 2 targets, 2 receptions. Like he didn't do a lot, right? He only had 6 carries. This past week, he had 7 targets, 4 receptions, 98 yards, and a touchdown. So, and Zeke is getting absolutely no work in the passing game. So, obviously, most of us play in PPR formats. It's not pretty. If Zeke's not scoring touchdowns, basically, he's not really doing much for you. He's a flex play. So with Tony Pollard, and he got that red zone, he got the long rushing. He had that long rush. He got stopped at the 1, and then they gave him the opportunity to score in the end zone on the goal line. But to me, I just think that you're going to go with the guy who's catching passes. And one thing I do want to mention, though, is that he only played 40% of snaps. So that's just something that I think we need to monitor. So Zeke is still the lead dog for now. It's just, if you're playing Zeke, you're only going to get 5 to 6 points if he's not getting any targets and he's not scoring touchdowns. So I just think that if this continues and if he's not scoring touchdowns, you're going to want to play Tony Pollard because he's safer, because you know that he's going to be getting the rushing work as well as the passing down work. So I'll say reluctantly, I'm going to go with Tony Pollard.
I guess I'm the only Zeke guy here. And, my thing is just that when Dak comes back, which, it's still going to be a few weeks out, but that's when those games matter most in fantasy. And we know that Zeke stays healthy. Like, he doesn't miss games. So he's still going to be there at the end of the season when Dak comes back. And when that offense starts humming again with Dak Prescott under center, I think that Zeke is going to be the benefactor. And then he'll go back to his 15, 20 carries per game and goal line work. And while I agree, Tony Pollard's going to have some huge spike weeks because of his volume and his usage in the passing game, I still think that Zeke is the guy here. So, it's not workhorse Zeke anymore. This isn't the same Zeke that came into the league and was, getting 300, 350 carries a season. That's just not the guy anymore. But I think that he's still going to finish the season somewhere between 200 and 250 carries. He's going to get the majority of the goal line work. And like I said, I think when Dak comes back, then we start seeing much better production. So I'm going to side with Zeke here, but I know that that's probably a minority opinion. And it seems like everybody is recency bias. We talk about it all the time, but Tony Pollard comes off a big game and all of a sudden everybody loves Tony Pollard more than Zeke.
Wait, but Dave, I got a question for you. What is that stat that you told me about receptions compared to carries in terms of fantasy points?
They're worth 2.5 as much as a carry, a target is.
Okay, then I'm just saying
if Pollard's getting 7 targets every single game, sure. Then it's going to be equal to Zeke's workload. But I don't know if he's going to be seeing 7 targets every week.
His production is going to be more volatile than Zeke, and like you said, the snap count is still Zeke 67% in week 2. As Troy already said, 39%, 40% for Tony Pollard. That's kind of, I don't expect Zeke to keep having all these down weeks. That doesn't mean I don't want to package him and try to trade him once he does have a nice bounce back week. But Pollard's just going to be way more unpredictable in terms of usage. But we're going to see those spike weeks.
The reason Zeke gets the snaps is because he is probably the best run blocking running back in the NFL. And he's never going to lose that role to Tony Pollard, who struggles in that aspect. So that's why Zeke's role is still relatively safe. And I'm just not really that concerned. We've seen a couple down weeks here, but we also haven't seen a touchdown. If Zeke does what Zeke normally does and punches in a touchdown in week 1 and a touchdown in week 2, then all of a sudden we're looking at Zeke with 11 and 12 point performances. We're looking at him as a standard, your middle of the road RB2, and people aren't freaking out nearly as much. So I think the touchdowns will come eventually. I'm not that concerned on Zeke. I actually think Zeke is a pretty good buy low right now. If you want to go out there, let me throw this one out there. I just made a trade for Zeke actually in a redraft league the other day. I had my one Cam Akers share that I drafted because he fell to a crazy spot in the draft. I traded away Cam Akers for Ezekiel Elliott. Is that a win or a loss? What do you guys think?
I think that's actually a win.
Yeah, I like that trade.
I like that trade.
Cool. All right. Well, I feel a little bit better now that I got the approval of both of you. Let's move on to the next question. And this one comes from Alex Bunch of Numbers. What is Amon-Ra St. Brown's value right now in Dynasty? Would you trade T. Higgins, CeeDee Lamb, or Deontay Johnson for Amon-Ra St. Brown? My goodness, 2 weeks into the season. Woo! And Amon-Ra St. Brown has gone from a wide receiver 3 in Dynasty to the T. Higgins, CeeDee Lamb, Deontay Johnson tier. Life comes at you fast. Troy, are you taking any of these guys over Amon-Ra St. Brown in Dynasty?
Oh, yeah, all of them. Yeah, I'm not. No, it's a valid question, right? Recency bias, the insane. But I guess it's not even recency, right? He's been doing this since the end of last year. He's had a long stretch of games. But one thing, I think that Amon-Ra St. Brown is still going to be a fantastic wide receiver. I think he's going to still see a high target share, but we can't forget about Jameson Williams. There is a reason why they spent such a high draft pick on Jameson Williams. I think he's been an afterthought because he's been injured, and Amon-Ra St. Brown, he's been going off. And I think he's still going to be extremely fantasy relevant, even with Jameson Williams back in the offense. But this guy, for lack of a better term, people compare him to Tyreek Hill. He's explosive. He was drafted to be the wide receiver 1 on that team. I believe that, and to couple with Amon-Ra St. Brown. So it doesn't take away from Amon-Ra St. Brown's talent, but I just think also just talent-wise, I think that T. Higgins, CeeDee Lamb, and Deontay Johnson are more talented. And that's not a knock on Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's amazing. I'm a huge, truther of him. But these guys, to me, I just have rank higher in Dynasty. I don't want to overreact too much. I'd give me these other guys over Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yeah, I think you make a strong case for taking Amon-Ra St. Brown over Deontay Johnson, but T. Higgins and CeeDee Lamb, I think that's just a little too steep for me. Vic, what do you have to add to this?
I'm with both of you, and that's exactly what I was going to say. I would consider trading Deontay Johnson for him. Deontay is, I think, 26 years old. Amon-Ra 22 years old. Deontay's got, we gave him a new contract, but it wasn't as long as we all expected it to be. I think that 2-year contract.
Or as pricey.
As pricey, that too. Yes, absolutely. And we talked about that in the offseason. And so, where is he going to go after that in just 2 years? So Amon-Ra, if he stays with the Lions, I assume so. They have a good offensive line. They have a good, solid core. It's just like Jared Goff, obviously, is that kind of bridge quarterback to maybe a rookie coming in, et cetera, stuff like that. He's gonna be on a talented team for a while. So I would consider Deontay. These other guys, I'm with you. Yeah, I'm not T. Higgins, CeeDee Lamb, that kind of stuff. DK Metcalf, I think, was in the original question. Definitely not yet, man. I do love me some St. Brown though.
Yeah, and that's another guy that I was fading a little bit. I thought that his end of season finish was a little bit fluky, but what he just did, 8th straight game with 8 or more receptions. The only 2 players in NFL history besides Amon-Ra St. Brown to ever have 8 consecutive games with 8 or more receptions, Michael Thomas and Antonio Brown. So joining some elite company, what they were unable to do during those games was score a touchdown in each of those games as well. So Amon-Ra St. Brown becomes the 3rd player in NFL history to have 8 straight games with 8 or more receptions, and just for the fun of it, he decided to tack on a touchdown every single week as well. Just absolutely mind-blowing. I think we are witnessing the birth of a superstar receiver here. But let's go on to the next question, and this one comes in from Tyler Cooper. I'm worried about Kyle Pitts. Would you play Evan Ingram or Tyler Conklin ahead of him? I think we're all on the same page here. Do we want to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down on how we feel about this? Maybe not.
Definitely. No,
Maybe not.
Yeah, Here's the thing. Notice how I was very reluctant.
Tyler Conklin.
I'm not. But at the same time, we need to talk about this.
No, we don't.
What I'm saying,
we should talk
about this. You know what Ingram and Conklin are getting that Kyle Pitts isn't getting?
Targets.
It's great. Look, Kyle Pitts' name, it's only going to last so long. It is week 5, and he's still not getting targets. I'm not playing Kyle Pitts because his name is Kyle Pitts. I need to see, and Arthur Smith did not give me a vote of confidence this week that he wants to throw to Kyle Pitts, even though they took him with the 4th overall pick in the draft. But just to block and not target him, that's a whole nother story. But to me, I need to see something. So what I want to ask you guys is, what is the breaking point for you guys in terms of what week does Kyle Pitts need to keep sucking until you make a change? What is your threshold of, inefficiency, no fantasy points? What is your guys' breaking point?
I mean, he might not be putting up elite numbers. I mean, he isn't
putting
up
numbers. Any numbers.
He's got 10 targets through his first 2 games, which isn't, what we expected from Kyle Pitts. But as far as tight end goes, it's still pretty decent usage. And, all it takes is him ripping off one big play or scoring a touchdown. That's what you're hoping for with a tight end. So, I mean, if he keeps putting up, 2 catches a game into week 5, that's when I might reevaluate things a little bit. But I'm not freaking out after 2 weeks. Absolutely not. I'm still starting, unless I somehow have a team with Kyle Pitts and Travis Kelce or Mark Andrews or something like that. That's the only way I'm benching Kyle Pitts.
No, I mean, look, that's completely fair. But look, there's people who are like, hey, these guys are actually getting targets. Like, I think Evan Ingram, has like either the second highest or third highest target share amongst all tight ends, which is pretty crazy to think about. But Evan Ingram, he's been getting Tyler Conklin. I think I saw a stat that he's run the most routes of any tight end, period, over the last 2 weeks.
Tyler Higbee leading all tight ends in targets.
Yeah, it is a wonky
year.
Yeah, it's just like, what is happening? And all this, Kyle Pitts should be leading the category in all these things, or at least top 3.
How we explain all of these wild things? What you said, Conklin leading in routes run, and Ingram leading in target share, and Tyler Higbee leading in targets. We can explain all that real simply. 2-week sample size. We're 2 weeks into the year. This doesn't mean that Tyler Conklin is going to continue being, the guy. It doesn't mean that Tyler Higbee is now usurping Cooper Kupp to be the wide receiver 1 in the Los Angeles Rams. That's not what any of this means. It's a 2-week sample size. Things are weird to start the year. At the end of the day, you got to bet on talent, and I'm not freaking out about Kyle Pitts just yet.
Can I raise a question? If
Absolutely.
This didn't say Kyle Pitts and it said TJ Hawkinson.
If it said anybody, no, I don't see TJ. I actually have not a lot of faith in TJ Hawkinson. I'm kind of fading him.
Okay, but if it said TJ and he's scored more points, I think barely than Pitts both weeks. But if it said TJ Hawkinson, I think we'd be saying something different. Oh, well. And if this was last year, let's say TJ Hawkinson, because we all were still saying, okay, maybe we got to believe in this guy.
Don't say we all.
Not you, Dave. I know, but I'm saying as a fantasy community, most of us were like, let's give this guy a chance. I think there's a middle ground here where you can only trust your studs will produce for so long. How many times can you put them in your lineup and he's getting 4, 5, 6 points where you could pick up a guy off of waivers if you're in a 10 or 12 team league, a guy like Gerald Everett who's been popping off the last couple weeks, albeit without Keenan Allen. But still, I think I'm with you both. I'm still rolling Kyle Pitts out there. Gets Seattle this week. You hope that they can kind of have a just a better. I know he's had a fine target share, but only 4 receptions. I'm rolling him out again, and I don't think I want to go this deep to an Evan Ingram or a Conklin, but at some point that name, the name just kind of, we have to let it go. If Mariota's not producing, maybe if Ritter's coming in and things change or whatever, but at some point 4 or 5 weeks down the line, if he's not producing, then he's just a name, just like Zeke that we're talking about, just a name.
And if you're, and I think you make a good point. I might have been a little bit over the top when I said Kelce or Andrews are the only guys. I think you can make strong arguments for putting in Zach Ertz, Darren Waller, Freiermuth, Kittle, maybe some of those guys if you happen to have one of them with Kyle Pitts. But I think you hit the nail on the head. We're just getting too far down the rankings list when we start talking about Evan Ingram and Tyler Conklin ahead of Kyle Pitts. But I think that, maybe you can slide him down a little bit and start looking at him as like the tight end 6, tight end 7 going into this week. But I don't want to get too crazy. This just seems like the classic case of somebody getting off to a cold start. People freak out. They put him on their bench. And then all of a sudden we see Kyle Pitts blow-up game this week where he puts up 35 points and he's sitting on your bench. It's way too early to freak out. So I think you still got to go with Kyle Pitts this week.
I agree. There's people, if people are 0-2, people get crazy when they're 0-2.
And a lot of Kyle Pitts teams are 0-2 right now.
Yeah, yep. Exactly.
Let's go on to the next one. This one comes from Paco Suarez, and Paco is asking us, should I pick up Marlon Mack or is Jordan Mason the handcuff to Jeff Wilson Jr.? Talked about this a lot last week, but now Marlon Mack is all of a sudden in the fold, muddying things up a little bit in the Bay Area. Victoria, is Marlon Mack the guy? Is it Jordan Mason? It seems like Tyrion Davis-Price picked up an injury, so now when things start to look a little bit clearer, then all of a sudden Marlon Mack shows up.
Yeah.
I cannot stand that we do this every single year. Who has a voodoo doll that's just with the 49ers running backs here just putting pins in it? Like, what can they just get? How is the running backs, the health guy, and not been fired yet? The health guy, the doctor, whatever. I can't talk. I cannot talk tonight. Okay, so no, my goodness. I mean, fine. Yeah, Tevin Coleman. I was just about to say
He's
that.
back.
Like, how many running backs can they have on this roster? I'm not playing Russian roulette here. If you got Jeff Wilson off waivers last week, I'm only rolling with him. Fine, because if you're gonna have him get injured this week, then you're gonna pick up Jordan Mason. And Marlon Mack's gonna come in and put up a stinker, 3.2 points. Like, I'm not picking these guys up, especially if you're in like a shallower bench league. I'm picking up other handcuffs over these guys for sure. If I have Wilson, that's fine. I think I'm a little bit more confident in starting Wilson after last week too, and with obviously the unfortunate injury to Trey Lance, Jimmy Garoppolo, that quarterback back there. I think it upgrades everyone else, all the other playmakers on the field. So I'm just my short answer is I don't want to get any of these guys. If you got a short bench, if you don't, fine. Marlon Mack is fine, I guess.
And Wilson is definitely the guy. Wilson had 2 long runs last week where he got knocked out at the one. And I know we were like, all 3 of us were beating the drum for Wilson pretty hard and didn't have the best final output, but he was getting the usage. So if you're concerned about Wilson for whatever reason this week, don't be. Just plug him in with confidence. You know, he got the usage and he was really close to having a 2-touchdown game. So, Troy, unless you got anything to add here, you know, we can move on to the next question, right?
I'm good.
All right. Next question comes from Jake Miller. Are you flexing Chase Edmonds this week? He didn't do much last week. Troy, start us off here. Your boy Chase Edmonds.
I don't want to. But okay. So for those who don't know, I was very high on Chase Edmonds going into the season. And week one he got the work. He got the workload that we were hoping for in terms of like, okay, and I felt vindicated. I'm like, okay, because me and Dave, he's been the Raheem Mostert guy, and I've been the Chase Edmonds guy. And look, Raheem Mostert, we've seen him not be able to handle a large workload because he has his injuries. And then also week one, we only saw him with like 5 rushing attempts. So I'm like, okay, I feel vindicated. Chase Edmonds is going to be the guy. All of a sudden, during the Baltimore game, Chase Edmonds, he barely played. He saw a 49%, snap share. He had, only 3 targets. And he didn't have many carries. He only had 5 carries, and compared to week one, we had 12. So they for some reason phased him out the game. They did line him up and like as a receiver a bunch. So I thought that was somewhat encouraging, even though they didn't throw to him as much as I would like. And here's the thing. I don't know if this is just going to be like a week-to-week game plan thing where they just go from Chase to Raheem Mostert depending on who the defense is or whatever the plan is for that week. I have no idea. Raheem Mostert looked good. And the difference is also Raheem Mostert is just more efficient at running the football. He's better at the running back position in terms of he's explosive. But the only knock on Raheem Mostert is that he's a little older and he's hurt. So you have to – but yeah, I'd see the Chase Edmonds, but I think Raheem Mostert is the one that we've seen in the past can't handle a heavy workload. So it's just, I don't know if it's like a mad scientist thing with Mike McDaniel or he changed his mind after week one, like, oh my gosh, you're extremely inefficient at running the ball. We're giving Raheem Mostert the RB1 position. I think we need to see it play out. A 2-week sample size. We have one guy being the guy 1 week, Raheem Mostert being the guy the next. So I think this upcoming week is going to tell a lot. So if we see Raheem Mostert as the RB1 again, then I think you almost could drop Chase Edmonds if we see a similar split because you don't need to keep him on your bench. If he's going to be putting up performances like he did last week, then he's not someone that you have to carry on your roster unless you're doing it as Raheem Mostert's handcuff. So that's my take on it.
Don't drop him yet.
I didn't say drop off. I said like let's look at the usage. But I'm saying if we continue to see Raheem Mostert as the starting running back one, and Chase Edmonds is just a handcuff. So there's plenty of handcuffs on the waiver wire. So I'm saying, like, you don't have to hold him if we see like a similar split. I know Dave wants to say a lot because Dave is the biggest Chase Edmonds hater I know, one of them. So please, Dave, tell us how you feel.
I mean, here's the thing. I think Chase Edmonds was great in his role in Arizona, where he got to play on passing downs and get the ball in space and, against light boxes. And that's what he did. He's a very good player in space. But my problem with Chase Edmonds was never Chase Edmonds, the player. I just never saw the fit with this offense. I mean, we see Kyle Shanahan running backs, the running backs that succeed in a Kyle Shanahan offense, which is what Mike McDaniels is running right now down in Miami, are running backs that run with reckless abandon, that, run along the edge. And then when they find that gap in the zone, they just dive headfirst into it. And they're willing to take hits, and they're willing to, punish other people that are trying to bring them down. You need to be a really aggressive, just headstrong running back in this type of offense. That's not what Chase Edmonds is. He's more of a scat back that does well when he gets the ball in space. So my issue was never Chase Edmonds. It was just the fit in this offense. And we know that Raheem Mostert has familiarity and a history of success in this type of offense. So that's why I liked him a little bit. Really, I think Sony Michel is a great fit for this offense. Why he was cut, I never know. But now Miami's kind of sitting in this situation.
But he's slow, though. Not a lot of the Shanahan running backs, they're fast guys. Mm-hmm. Sony Michel isn't like, he's not really known for being his speed. So I think that maybe they just couldn't find a fit in regards to that.
Yeah. But now, looking at the running back room there, you got Mostert, who's the old guy who's always getting hurt. And then Chase Edmonds and Myles Gaskin are very similar players, where they're both undersized, speedy guys that can do a lot in space. So really, I think Mostert is the only guy that is really built to handle these early down touches. When you look at the rushing yards over expectation, which is a statistic that is pretty good for measuring efficiency, Chase Edmonds is the worst in rushing yards over expectation per attempt. I mean, efficiently, he is the worst running back so far in the league. And it's early in the season. We've already talked about the 2-game sample size and not reading too much into it, but this is exactly my fear with Chase Edmonds, and it looks like it's already kind of coming to fruition a little bit. So to answer your question, Jake, no, I don't think I'd be flexing Chase Edmonds at this point. I think you got to keep him stashed on the bench. He's still got some contingent value if something happens to Raheem Mostert, but he's not somebody I think you can confidently start this week.
Chase Edmonds, I messaged both Dave and Troy this weekend, and I said, Chase Edmonds is dead to me. Okay, I hyped him up so much last week. We hyped him up on the show. I said he's going to return RB2 value last week. We already went over the 67% of the touches in week 1. He had a nice target share. The Ravens allowed the Jets running backs to have 19 targets. I'm like, this is setting up. They're going to be down. They're going to have to come back. This is setting up to be such a great Chase Edmonds week. And then he just fell flat on his face and lost a lot of people, me, on their matchups for the week. So for right now, keep him on the bench. See if this usage, if this is going to be hot hand, then we're all going to be pretty upset with our Chase Edmonds picks here. But let's just leave him on the bench for now, see how things work out, and we'll just hope that it was a little bit of a hot hand or it was a weird game. We all saw that.
Chase Edmonds did get the touches at the very end, which was kind of, but that was when,
that long run.
He had that long run, but that's when Baltimore was playing on their heels. They were in a prevent offense, and that's kind of what Chase Edmonds did when he was in Arizona. He'd come in late in the games, he'd come in on passing downs and 3rd and longs. That's where Chase Edmonds can excel, but he's just not a guy that can really run between the tackles or even has the tenacity and the speed to get outside in this zone blocking scheme. And I think that's why it's just built better for Raheem Mostert. But anyway, let's go. We have one question left, and then we're going to get to the chat. We have a ton of chat questions that we will get to soon. So let's answer this question from our good friend and Football Guy staffer himself, Zayra. He is asking, I was offered Alvin Kamara and Keenan Allen for Devontae Adams. Should I take it? So are you giving up Devontae Adams if you're getting Alvin Kamara and Keenan Allen back? Victoria, start us off here.
I answered Sarah on Twitter earlier, and I'm not sure I would do this. So my concern, I did see Keenan Allen's back practicing this week. That's a great sign. Kamara, I just worry about the usage. I think it's like a Zeke thing too. I don't think we're going to see this usage be this odd for these kind of guys that we are trying to count on here. And it goes the same the other way for Davante Adams. I don't think we're going to be seeing him have a 10-point game very often this season. Dude's a stud. He got an insane target share week 1. Last week was a little bit fluky with that usage and that target share. I think he's way too much of a stud to be selling for these two guys. Keenan Allen, I worry that Mike Williams he looked so good last week. He got a massive target share, obviously without Allen in the game, but I worry for Keenan Allen going forward, not necessarily in a way that he won't help your team, but not like a Davante Adams will help your team. I just think it's close though. It's really, really close. And depending on your build, I know Zara said you had J.K. Dobbins on the bench and one other guy. Dobbins worries me to want to count on him right away this week. I know he had a full practice today, but we'll see what happens. I just think I wouldn't do this trade right now, especially full PPR.
Troy?
I will say that this is a fair trade, right? Normally we see trades like this and it's like completely obvious who the winner is because I feel that there's Alvin Kamara still has a lot of upside. It's only, been 2 weeks, and Keenan Allen, we know that he's the wide receiver 1 on his team, even though Mike Williams had a great performance without him. I don't think if I had Davante Adams, I don't think I would do this trade. And the reason why is because there's only so many wide receivers in the league that are going to be getting an insane target share every single week like Davante Adams is going. So he's an X factor, right? He's up there with the Cooper Kupps. He's up there with the Stephon Diggs. Like, they're just in an elite tier of guys who are going to just see an insane amount of targets. And right now, Davante Adams, he's 4th in targets over the past 2 weeks, as well as he's 3rd in red zone targets. So they're looking to him in the end zone. So similarly to last year, well, every other year where Aaron Rodgers would be at the goal line, he'd be looking for Davante Adams. We saw that a little bit with what Carr's doing. He's looking for Davante Adams near the goal line too. So I'm going to keep Davante. I just feel like he's just so much of an X factor. So I'm going to keep him.
So I saw Zayrod just added some context to this trade, saying I have A.J. Brown, Cooper Kupp, Jalen Waddle, and T. Higgins. So just loaded out the gills with wide receivers there. Aaron Jones is RB1, and he has no good RB2. So that really changes it up for me. Even before seeing that context, though, I was wondering why nobody was really talking about Alvin Kamara. Like, everyone was talking about, Keenan Allen. Like, both of you were talking about Keenan Allen.
I said, come on. I was talking about it.
I think Kamara, I think he is almost, a pretty even with Davante Adams. I don't think there's a huge fall off there. And again, talking about recency bias, but we see 2 slow games to start off the season for Alvin Kamara. And all of a sudden we forget how good Alvin Kamara actually is. I would take that trade, Z, and I don't look at it as downgrading Kamara or Davante Adams down to Keenan Allen. I look at it as basically making a pretty neutral trade, shipping off Davante Adams for Alvin Kamara and getting Keenan Allen to go along with it and add some depth to that wide receiver core. I think I'd do that. I mean, there's not a lot that I'd give up Davante Adams for, but if you're getting a top 10 running back and a top 20 receiver, that's when you make a trade like that.
With the context, to me, it's different. If you already have Kupp, A.J. Brown, Waddle, and Higgins, those are 4 incredible receivers that you could do just fine without Davante. So with that context, yeah.
And you don't want to bleed too much value, but at a certain point, you got to put together a roster. And if you're starting, Kenyon Drake and Mike Davis in your RB2 spot, and you can upgrade that up to Alvin Kamara, all of a sudden it makes a lot of sense.
Right.
No, but with the context, it's a little different. I completely get it if you want to do that trade.
Well, we got somebody saying, don't give up in the chat. Dominate your league at receiver and flex, but I don't know. Kamara is an RB2. I like that. But let's go ahead and get into the chat questions because we have a ton and we have less than 15 minutes. So we're going to be on less than 1 minute per question here, but let's go ahead and do it. Is it a bad idea to start Curtis Samuel, Jahan Dotson, and Logan Thomas this week?
I don't think it's that bad. I don't think it's that bad of an idea. Yeah, I don't know if it's
Washington. Both these teams might put up 40 or 50 points. I think this is going to be a shootout.
I always worry. Yeah, you starting that many players on the same team is just
not even the same team. The same team led by Carson Wentz. You're putting half of your fantasy lineup in the hands of Carson Wentz.
He's been a fantasy god the past 2 weeks.
Yeah, I feel like we always see this with the Carson Wentz and these like short little, tiny little samples where it's like, all right, Carson Wentz finally finally figured it out. And then as soon as we put some faith and trust in him, boom, we get rugged, and Carson Wentz is the old Carson Wentz again.
Revenge game is going to fall on this. No,
I like all of these guys as standalone players. I like Curtis Samuel. I like Jahan Dotson, and I really like Logan Thomas. He cracked my top 12 in tight end rankings this week, but I would not feel comfortable about starting 3 people on the Commanders in a single week. Next question comes in from Ike, as our good friend of the show. Why do the Bills keep using Zach Moss? Signed an angry Singletary rosterer. Victoria, why? Why? Like, we haven't even talked about James Cook, who's not getting touches. Why is Zach Moss out there?
I honestly am not sure. And when Zach Moss goes out there, he's just a hard nose runner. He's good for the end zone, but to see him between the tackles is just... it's a little mind-boggling to me, and every time he's out there, I'm like, get Motor, get Singletary out there. They need a little more consistency to get him into a rhythm. For right now, though, Singletary drafters is just not looking good. It's just not looking good. The passing game and Josh Allen at the goal line is just not a good combination for Singletary. You got to bench him for now.
Let's go to the next question, and Z, I feel for you, man. I know this team is stressing you out right here looking at this question. Which of these wide receivers would you start over Jalen Waddle, or start Jalen Waddle over A.J. Brown versus the Commanders or Devontae Adams versus the Titans? Hopefully you make that trade, and then you don't have to worry about starting. And then you just, you get Alvin Kamara as your RB2, and you put Keenan Allen on the bench, and you get to start Jalen Waddle and A.J. Brown. But no, that's a tough one.
It doesn't matter, Z. You're gonna win. I'm sorry. Yeah. Look at this privilege right here. You're gonna be just fine with everything.
He's just trying to flex. He's trying to flex.
Out of here with that nonsense.
Yeah, I'm really torn between my Cooper Kupp and Justin Jefferson starts. Let me, could you guys help me out here? Z, love you, man. Thanks for watching the show all the time. Another question from our friend Ike saying, is Derrick Henry washed under 3 yards per carry on his last 113 attempts? It's time for the conversation, and I'll be the one to say it. Derrick Henry is washed. Derrick Henry's been washed. We have seen this for 3 straight years now. His rushing yards over expectation have been dipping. His yards after contact per attempt have been dipping. His yards before contact have been dipping. His broken tackle rate has been going down. His juke rate has gone down. We have seen this year after year after year. And last year, there was this misconception that he still had it. He was propped up by insane usage in the passing game, which he had never seen in his career before, seeing a career high in touches per game, and he had the highest touchdown rate of his career. But if you looked at the underlying metrics last year, his efficiency was going downhill really quickly, even before his injury. So we talked about this a lot this offseason. I don't think any of us were really beating the drum for drafting Derrick Henry in the first round. I mean, it seemed like a pretty easy one to avoid. And for whatever reason, come August, there Derrick Henry was still going 3rd, 4th, 5th in almost every single draft. So, maybe I was a little bit aggressive there, calling him washed. Don't want to put that title on the king, but man, he has not
definitely
looked
pressed
good this
the panic button. Yeah, definitely panicking. So
here's what I'm going to say. You're going to keep playing him, and the Titans are still going to be running their offense through him. So even if he's not efficient, he may not be efficient, but you know what? The Titans have literally built their entire team around Derrick Henry, so you're going to keep playing him. He's going to keep scoring touchdowns, and it's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be pretty, but listen, I'm not going to say he's washed. He's inefficient, but don't even think about sitting him. You're just going to keep playing him and hope he scores a touchdown, which he probably will.
He's Zeke, but he's 2 years older and on a worse offense.
Exactly. I made that comparison today, which is funny. Yeah, I made the same exact comparison.
And now with Taylor Lewan picking up an injury and possibly missing the entire season, I'm not sure if you saw, but we were talking about this in our internal Football Guys chat today. And Matt Petoni, who does all of our offensive line rankings, said that without Taylor Lewan, who is 31 years old and not an elite offensive lineman anymore, but he said that just by losing him and who they have to put in as a replacement level, dropped him all the way down to the 29th ranked offensive line. So now you've got an old Derrick Henry with dwindling efficiency running behind a very bad offensive line with a quarterback, Ryan Tannehill, who kind of looks checked out. I mean, this is not the Ryan Tannehill we've seen in years past. The Titans are kind of looking like a dumpster fire right now. I think the best thing that could happen for Derrick Henry is they make the switch to Malik Willis. He injects a little bit of juice into the offense, and then all of a sudden Derrick Henry can get going again. But not feeling good about Derrick Henry right now. That's for sure.
Malik probably gonna turn the ball over a bunch of times, but I feel you. I understand why. But
Next question comes in from Rodney Stewart. Can we expect Jameis Winston to be able to finish the season with his back injury? We get this report that Jameis Winston has broken vertebrae in his back right before the game on Sunday. And then what does he do? He comes out and gives us a vintage 3-interception performance. Oh my gosh, it was brutal to see. But you got to be concerned because he looked pretty good in week 1. Week 2, with this injury, he looked awful. Guys, do you have any concerns that he doesn't finish the year?
Definitely. The injury is so concerning, but I'm assuming you didn't draft Jameis Winston to be your QB1. Maybe you did, but there's got to be somebody else out there. You got a 10 or 12 team league. There's got to be somebody else out there you can stash as well. This is the only time I would say stash a second QB because you don't know what's going to happen. One hit, he could take a hit and be out for quite some time. So I'd stash someone from the waiver wire.
I believe I saw a report that I think the doctors aren't worried about it. It's not going to get worse, or he can't worsen the injury that he has. It's a bad injury, but he can't worsen it.
But how could you not worsen it? How?
Are we trusting that health guy? For sure.
Well, this health guy I think is pretty reputable. The one that I saw.
I hate you guys.
But I think that this health guy has some good information. So we'll see. I think that I don't know. I guess I don't know because let's say I hope he does because I don't want his who's his backup? Who's James
Taysom Hill?
Backup?
Ian Book?
Besides Taysom. Ian Book. Oh God, no. Oh, please no. Please just play Taysom and then I'll pick up Taysom and score me a bunch of fancy.
Oh, they brought in Andy Dalton this offseason. That's right. Andy Dalton.
Oh yeah. Okay. I actually might prefer Andy Dalton compared to what I saw week 2.
Yeah, force feed Michael Thomas the same way you force fed AJ Green and Allen Robinson last year.
I actually wouldn't mind that. If we keep getting week 2 James Winston, put in Andy.
Let's go to the next question, and this one comes from Brian Ward. Should I drop DK Metcalf?
No.
Pick up a wide receiver.
Don't do that.
No.
Anyone else
you can drop. You probably got a backup quarterback. You probably got a tight end. If you're thinking about dropping DK Metcalf, you got to have something else. If you got a backup kicker, backup defense, backup tight end, backup quarterback, drop something. Do not drop DK Metcalf yet, because somebody in your league would be pretty happy if
I would be very happy if I saw him hit the waiver wire.
Next question comes in from Mike Falzerano. I think PPR need to sit one. Josh Jacobs, Kareem Hunt, Amari Cooper, or Tony Pollard. This is a tough one here.
PPR, okay.
Josh Jacobs.
I want to say Jacobs. It's between Jacobs and Pollard, but Jacobs, I thought he would bounce back with an easier matchup last week, and it wasn't so great.
Jacobs not getting passing work, and he's not scoring touchdowns for me.
Yeah.
I'm saying Jacobs.
For me, it's looking at the matchup against Tennessee. I think that's a game that Las Vegas wins pretty handily, and I think that Jacobs could get a lot of run late in the game, even if he's not getting, this is a game script that could really work in his favor where he gets a couple of touchdowns. So I think I'm going to go with him there. I know we were kind of hyping him up earlier on the show, but I think I'm benching Tony Pollard out of this bunch.
Yeah, it's close. It's really close.
Next question comes from Brett Burton. What is your confidence level in starting Breece Hall versus Cincinnati as a flex in a standard fantasy league after his performance last week? Breece Hall, week 1, this guy was all over the passing game, getting an elite target share, looking pretty good. And then last week, it just completely flip-flopped. And then all of a sudden, Michael Carter's the pass-catching guy, and Breece Hall looks like dust. This is a very tough to read backfield. Real quickly, before you guys answer this, I'll just I was on a podcast earlier today, and we were talking about the situation. And I said that I'm still starting Breece confidence with not confidence, but you know that this big game is coming. We see this all the time with rebuilding teams where they have these guys with low draft capital that get fed for a year or two, and then when the team is ready to make that switch from rebuilding to competing, they spend up on a running back. We saw the Bears do it with David Montgomery after 2 years of Jordan Howard. We saw the Jaguars do it with Travis Etienne after 2 years of James Robinson. We just saw the Jets do it now after 1 year of Michael Carter by drafting Breece Hall. So I think there's going to be one of these games, one of these weeks. It could be this week, next week. It could be week 10. But there's going to be a week where Breece Hall comes out running hard and looking good, and they are just going to feed him. And then that is going to be the official changing of the guard. Sometimes it takes time for these rookie running backs to get up to speed. Remember Cam Akers? It took him half a season to beat out Malcolm Brown. It took J.K. Dobbins almost a full season to beat out. I don't even remember who it was at the time.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't get hot until the very end of the season. Even Jonathan Taylor was losing touches to Marlon Mack for the first 6 weeks of his rookie season. So it's going to take Breece Hall some time, but you're starting him up because it is only a matter of time before he goes for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns.
I agree.
Start him. He still had 10 and 13 PPR points the last couple of weeks. That's fine. He's going to get his
first games. Yep. Next question. Week 3, Carson Wentz or Tua Tagovailoa. We talked about both these guys to start the show. I got them in the same tier, but who are you guys going with?
I'm going Tua.
All right.
Wentz slightly, yeah.
Tiebreaker. I've got these guys in the same tier, but I got to make a decision to help out Alex Kachow here, and I'm going to say Tua. Tua, a really close one for me. I have Tua 1 spot ahead of Carson Wentz. Next question comes in from Twitch. Start 3 receivers in full PPR. CeeDee Lamb, Terry McLaurin, Gabe Davis, Mike Williams, Tyler Lockett, Julio Jones. Cut Julio Jones out of the conversation right away. He does not belong in here. I'm going to cut Tyler Lockett as well. That leaves us with CeeDee, Terry, Gabe Davis, Mike Williams. Who are you guys benching out of these 4? Bench 1.
Terry.
I think it's Terry. Yeah.
Terry.
Yeah. I mean, Terry McLaurin, I never really understood the hype. Every single year we're drafting this guy to be a top 5, top 10 receiver, and he always finishes a back-end wide receiver too. I think you got to go with the ceiling here. I mean, we saw week 1, Gabe Davis didn't get a ton of looks, but he got the big play looks. And then last week, without Gabe Davis in the lineup, Stephon Diggs got the short and intermediate looks. He got the deep looks. He got the explosive. I mean, he got everything. So I think that with Gabe Davis back in there, he'll facilitate that role as a big play receiver again. Next question from DV Severe. Someone offered me a trade. CeeDee Lamb for my AJ Dillon. Should I accept? Yes.
Smash.
If you are getting AJ Dillon and getting CeeDee Lamb, go do it. Another question comes in from James Johnson. Higgins and Sutton for McLaurin and Dillon. Who wins? T. Higgins and Cortland Sutton on one side of this trade. Terry McLaurin and AJ Dillon on the other. Higgins.
I already know what. Yeah, we all agree. Yeah,
Higgins and Sutton wins.
Higgins and Sutton very easily. Next question comes from Jacob. Should I make a trade? I have Wentz, Henry, Dobbins, or J-Rob, Diggs, Evans, Waller, and Higgins. I'm using Higgins and Dobbins and J-Rob for a big running back. If not Higgins, then Evans. I mean,
so
a lot to compress here, but I think you got a decent team. I don't think there's any need to make a trade. I mean, you got
I'd stay put. I think no overreactions to 2 weeks. I'd stay put.
Yeah, you don't have to do anything. Like, let's just chill. Just hold.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I don't think there's any reason to make a big change here. Next question comes in from Bougie saying, is Austin Eckler a buy candidate right now? Victoria, talk to us.
Guys, we were talking how we were so worried about Eckler last week, and the usage is a little concerning now. The usage, especially at the goal line last week, was mind-numbingly crazy. We don't want to see that week in and week out. But this man is still a top 15 running back and hasn't scored a touchdown yet. I think he's a buy candidate. Yes.
Yeah, completely agree. And, people are getting really concerned about his usage, but I'm not freaking out about it yet. All right, guys. Unfortunately, that's all we got time for today. We had way too many questions here, and we had some really good conversation. Still have a few questions to get to. Feel free to shoot DMs on Twitter if you have any more questions, and we'll do our best to get to those. But before we sign off, Victoria, one more time, let everybody know where they can find you on Twitter.
At FFB_Victoria, Twitter and Instagram.
Troy?
You can find me at T-King Mode pretty much on all social media platforms, but Twitter's my home base.
And you can find me on Twitter at Dave Kluge. That is Kluge. I want to thank you so much for tuning in today. If you have not already, be sure to subscribe at youtube.com/footballguys so you can check out this show, our short videos, all of our full-length shows, and everything else that we have to do at Football Guys. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you next week.